This is Matt here, and today I've got a gunpoint mechanic build for the house Escher. This is the character here. So this is basically the build. All this stuff is pretty much necessary to make the build operate the way that I use it. And then there's a couple of slots spare there's probably a few different choices that you could take that will all be good for different things. So I'll just kind of explain how the basic build works and why I've got these skills, and then I'll explain a couple of other options that you could go with. So the whole centerpiece of this is gunpoint affinity. So when you have this maxed out, after you've used a ranged attack, then you get minus 65% cost to your next melee offensive AP cost. So next time you do any offensive melee skills, so that means strike and ambush, power strike, machine strike, any melee offensive skill, 65% cost reduction. So basically means that a two weapon attack where you attack with both weapons normally is 30, so that will cost about 10 AP with this skill. So that's kind of the basic gunpoint skill that's unique for Escher, and one of the things, the sort of signature things that makes House Escher different. So they're quite good, basically makes them quite good at sort of closing with the enemy, shooting with a pistol or other ranged weapon, then running into melee and finishing off the opponent in melee. So basically, in order to maximize the efficiency with this, what you want to do is shoot with your pistol, which will cost you 15 AP. Then instead of just running into melee and attacking with your one melee weapon in your other hand, which normally would cost 15 AP, then the 65% reduction would mean it would only cost you 5 AP. You'll actually use 5 AP to switch in a second weapon. So now you're going to be attacking with both hands for 30 AP. So the minus 65% cost reduction is giving you more of a discount. You're saving 20 AP instead of only 10. But then you can make it even more effective by using Power Strike, which actually costs even more AP. It costs 35% extra AP at max level to what your strike would normally cost. So it costs like 40 AP or 42 AP or something like that, for 40 AP. So then when you get your 65% reduction, you're saving even more AP, but you're doing more damage because Power Strike does 100% extra damage. It does have a higher chance of being evaded though, so you can choose not to use it and just use a normal strike sometimes if you wish. But yeah, that's the basic concept of using gunpoint affinity. You want to shoot a pistol on the way in, then switch weapons for another 5 AP to get 2-weapon attack, and that 2-weapon attack will be heavily discounted by the gunpoint affinity, and then you use even more powerful attack to take more advantage of that discount in the cost to do extra damage kind of thing. Now, this particular character has got an extra sort of advantage in that they can take this skill called Builder's Boon. So what happens with this is that whenever you use a build skill, it costs you get minus 75% cost to your next strike skill, right? And then also it works in concert with this skill, Revved Up, which is every time you use strike, shoot, or machine strike, you get minus 15 cost to your build AP. So the thing that we're going to be building in this situation is Pheromone Canister, which costs 15 AP. So after using a shoot action, which you'll fire your pistol as you run in, you'll get one charge of this ability that gives you minus 15 AP to your next build. So then you build a Pheromone Canister, which is now free because of the Revved Up. And then because of Builder's Boon, after you've built that free Pheromone Canister, your next strike will be minus 75% AP. So this is quite flexible in the way that you use it as well, because you'll be having both of these buffs at the same time. So you come in, you shoot, that gives you a free build, and it gives you 65% reduction of your next offensive skill. Then you build something for free, and that gives you minus 75% of your next strike. So you can use those two skills together by just using a strike next, and that will give you minus 75 and minus 65% both on that strike, so it'll be 0%, so it'll be free. Or you can use Power Strike, which will take advantage of the minus 65% reduction from gunpoint. So instead of 40, it'll be like 10 AP. or 13 AP or something like that. But then you've still got the 75% reduction on strike that you can use for your follow-up attack. So if the power strike doesn't kill them, you can then use Builder's Boon on the next strike to get 75% reduction in that. So it makes this character quite powerful, maybe on a par with a brawler for kind of like melee ability almost. Especially, maybe not quite, but with the Pheromone Canister as well. So when you place on this Pheromone Canister, you won't be able to put the enemy inside it because of the area where you put it down has to be clear. But quite often you can put it down in such a way that it'll cover your character when your character goes into melee with them. So that will give you an extra 30% melee precision. So when you would otherwise maybe be getting grazes on the enemy, this will mean that you'll get that you won't get a graze as much. You'll have 30% more chance to penetrate their hit resistance. And the other good thing about this, it doesn't say it here, but there's a sort of hidden part to Pheromone Canister. If you're standing in it, you get 30% melee precision and 30% range precision, but after you leave the area, you also have a 15%, like a half version of this, 15% melee precision and 15% range precision that stays with you for the whole rest of the battle. So basically, you just have to have one of these characters in your team, and then he's going to be placing down Pheromone Canisters probably all over the place every time they attack. So your other gang members can kind of just run through that and pick up that 15 extra precision that they can then carry with them for the rest of the game. So it gives that extra help to your team as well. But yeah, so basically that's going to be the cycle. They're going to shoot. That's going to give them a heavily discounted next melee attack and a free build. They're going to do a build that's going to give them a heavily discounted strike as well. Then they're going to hit the opponent, and then they're going to change weapons to do a big double strike on the opponent. If that doesn't kill them, big double power strike. Sorry, if that doesn't kill them, they can do a big strike with two-handed weapons. Two one-handed weapons for cheap as well, and that will hopefully kill the enemy. But there's also a lot of flexibility with it because ideally how you reset after that is after that guy's dead, then you would switch back onto your pistol again so you can start the cycle again. But you sometimes if you've got an enemy that's low on health and you're not going to need all of that damage, you can just leave the one-handed weapon on and just use the one-handed weapon. So instead of doing, when you've got the 65% reduction on your melee skills, instead of this being a 13 AP double strike, you can make it like a 6 or 7 AP single-handed strike. But it's still going to do 100% extra damage with one hand. So it's going to be quite powerful. And the same with your strike skill. You could have the 75% reduction in strike to do a 7 AP double-handed strike, or like a 3 or 4 AP one-handed strike if that's all you need, and then that means that you save the 5 AP for switching your weapon out, because you normally have to put the pistol back on afterwards. So that's going to save you 5 AP to take the pistol off and 5 AP to put it back on. So that gives it quite a lot of flexibility, this build, compared to the other Gunpoint builds. So it's quite good in that way as well. There's other interactions as well between building. Sometimes you might want to build the canister for some reason separately from fighting, and that's going to give you your Builder's Boon, and vice versa. So just the rest of the skills, basically, Vanguard I think is just a must-take for all characters pretty much. That extra 75 HP. Maybe it's just a personal preference for me, but I find if I don't have it, characters are way too squishy. If you're playing on Deadly, especially if you've got the enemy tenacity with the extra 50% damage buff on the enemies, they can just pop you really quickly. And even without that, if you're playing a game type that makes the enemies more aggressive, they can kill you quite easily if you don't have that on. And I definitely wouldn't take Rear Guard for the same reason, that characters with 150 get dropped all the time. But that 275 gives them quite a solid amount of health. And then Iron Will is the other one that I pretty much take on every character. Gives you a self-heal of 50 HP and plus 75% hit resistance and stun resistance that you can put on yourself, and that buff of hit resistance and stun resistance lasts for all of that turn and all of your following turns. So really powerful, and that combined with your 275 HP can make your characters pretty tanky, even without anything else. Power strike, of course, you basically need this just to give you a more expensive strike, so you get more advantage out of the discount from gunpoint. And exertion is another just skill that I take on pretty much every character. Just gives you 15 extra movement points and action points anytime you need it. But then it puts a debuff on you that can keep stacking the more times you use it. That debuff though can get removed by willpower. Although it seems like because it gives you 2 debuffs, it gives you this debuff that gives you minus 15 initiative, and it gives you this debuff that makes all of your skills cost an extra 20%, or at max it's only 5 initiative and 10. It seems like your willpower strips them off one at a time, so each turn you've got a chance to lose 1 debuff. If you've got, say, you might have like 50% stress resistance or something, you've got 50% chance to lose a buff each turn, but you'll probably lose the initiative first and then the action point one. It's going to take a few turns to get rid of it, and by then you might have used it again. So I still think it's worth it, but yeah, you have to kind of pace yourself and not use it too often if you don't want to stack up those debuffs early. Sometimes you might want to not use it too early in the first couple of turns. But usually what I do is I take a leader with the rally skill, and rally clears up to 3 debuffs off of everyone within a 10-meter radius in your team. So you can basically just go ham on the exertion on everyone, and then just use your leader to clean that off them. So that's basically the build. I'd recommend you definitely take all of these skills, but then there's sort of 2 extra slots that you don't really need anything in particular to fill those slots, so you've got a bunch of different options there. So I'll just talk about the active skill first. So one thing about this is that this character's probably on par, or there's pluses and minuses about this compared to a brawler. And basically this character doesn't, because normally a lay mechanic can put down health dispensers and barricades and stuff like that. They've got quite a lot of functionality as well as their damage dealing capability. They're not usually particularly high damage dealers. This one's a lot higher of a damage dealer than your average mechanic, but essentially they're just like a budget brawler. They're just going to kind of kill about the same, or maybe not, plus or minus a little bit on a brawler. They're not going to be that much different from a brawler in terms of their damage output. So in that case, why wouldn't you just take a brawler? But yeah, the Pheromone Canister does give them a little bit extra functionality, because that's a buff for your whole team. And I sort of feel like to really sell getting this character over a brawler, a little bit extra functionality on top of that could be is kind of like the thing that would sell it. So for me, taking barricade is quite a good option. It just gives this this extra toolkit that this character brings that's unique. But I find that with my Escher gang, because they all use the gunpoint, so they all fire a pistol then charge into melee. It's a very offensive type of build, so barricade doesn't really work with that, because you're going to just keep leaving your barricades behind all the time. I mean, it still can be useful occasionally when you're not ready to run into melee, or it's definitely a useful skill, but it's not as useful as it could be with other builds that aren't so melee focused as my gangs are. So it's definitely a good option. If you took a barricade, it wouldn't be a bad option, but there's sort of there's arguments for other things as well. So another one that I think is really strong is battle advice. So battle advice gives you minus 50. Well, the important reason why I want to take it is it gives you minus 50% on the cost of your aimed shot. So if this character takes it, you can't buff yourself, but that's okay, because this character doesn't want to ever do aim shot. This character only ever wants to do shoot, because Revved Up only goes off shoot. It doesn't work off aimed. But gunpoint affinity, which is what all of your other gunpoint Eschers that go along in the gang with this character, they all have this gunpoint affinity, and for that they just have to perform a ranged attack. So aimed shot is a ranged attack, just like shoot is also a ranged attack. So either of those will trigger gunpoint affinity. But if you put battle advice on, then aim shot costs 50% less. So a normal pistol shoot costs 15, whereas a normal aim shoot costs 20. But minus 50% cost, that means an aim shot costs 10. That means that if you can get this buff on all of your other guys, they can do that initial pistol shot for only 10 AP instead of 15 to trigger their gunpoint, and then they can change weapons, do a big strike. So this battle advice is really powerful on on all of your other characters. Just because that little 5 AP that you're saving from shooting your pistol, like, just kind of adds up, and can just be the difference between an extra attack sometimes. So that's quite good. And also, because you need to have intelligence for this skill, I think that works in with one of the other skills, maybe. Yeah, so these Builder's Boons, you need to have Intelligence 12 to max it out. So that kind of works in well because you want to have Intelligence 12 to max Battle Advice out as well. So you can cast lots of them, so you can get it on everybody as quickly as possible. So that's a point for that. The other skill I'd potentially take, well, actually, delay. There's sort of an argument for delay as well. If you want to make this guy like an explosive damage dealer, they kind of hide for a turn, cast delay on themselves, and they come out the next round with sort of extra action points, so extra damage capability, extra movement as well. So that's a possibility too. Cautious Strike is the other one that I think is quite good, because sometimes you'll come up against the character where you'll do your initial big burst of damage, get them down to 40-50% health, and then they've got Perseverance, or they've got Lead Through Pain, or something that's going to kick in that's going to give them plus 35% hit resistance, or plus 60% hit resistance, or whatever. So they're basically going to go from really squishy, and you smash them down to half health instantly, and then all of a sudden they've got like 80, 90, 100% hit resistance, and they're super difficult to damage. Or maybe they've already popped their Iron Will the previous turn, and that's given them 75% hit resistance. So for whatever reason, they might be really hard to penetrate. So you'll hopefully have popped down your Pheromone Canister, which will give you plus 30% melee precision if you're inside of the aura. So that's going to penetrate. If they've got 100% hit resistance, for example, that's going to penetrate 30 of it, so get it down to like 70. But then 70% hit resistance is still really high, you know. So if you can get this Cautious Strike, that reduces another 30 off it, so it puts down to 40% hit resistance. Now you're in full damage like 60% of the time. So it's a really big damage increaser against high hit resistance, and it's basically essentially like a normal strike. So you can just use it with you can use it two-handed with both hands for 30 AP, and the Gunpoint affinity is going to give you the minus 65% cost to that. Now the Builder's Boon won't, so the 75% strike, that doesn't work on that, but the Gunpoint affinity will, and it's really useful because it's just there ready in case you ever need that extra penetration. You can just use it, you know. I found it really handy on a number of different builds. Cautious Strike for melee, or Calculated Shot does the same thing for ranged. So I think those are the good options for there. For this last passive, I think Bulwark is quite a solid defensive one. Gives you an extra 20% damage absorption every time you kneel. And it's a good idea to try to kneel at the end of every turn. It only costs 5 AP, or if you've maxed out your characters, I think it's actually free once you get above a certain level. Excuse me. And that's going to give you 20% damage absorption until the start of next turn. So it's up quite a lot. There's also this skill, Litany of Steel, that you could consider. You're going to be using Reload Weapon quite a bit because of your melee arm. Requires to be reloaded, but it's got three ammunition, so you only have to reload it like every second or third turn, so you're not necessarily going to have this up all the time, whereas Bulwark, you probably can have that up pretty much all the time if you just remember to kneel at the end of each turn. And the kneeling will also, as well as the 20% damage absorption, kneeling will also make you immune to pinning, and also give you extra ranged evasion. Usually if you've got some cover nearby and stuff, you'll make your profile smaller and you get more ranged evasion. So that's another option, but I'd prefer Bulwark if you were going to go for something defensive. If you want to go for something offensive, Machine Spirit. Every time you use a Field Repair, Reload Weapon, or Anointed Weapon, so again, Reload Weapon's the one that you're going to use, that gives you plus 15% crit for the next 10 attacks. So the only thing I don't like about this is that your initial one attack or two attacks, so the first time you attack, you're going to use a charge with your weapon arm, and then potentially you could reload weapon for 5 AP after that first attack. but you don't need to reload weapon until you've done 3 attacks. So you're kind of wasting that 5 AP to get this charge on. So you might not do that reload that first turn or the second turn even. You might wait till the 3rd turn. So that means you're not getting this crit chance until the 3rd turn. So so it's a bit I'm a bit iffy about that one. But if you want more offense, that is an option for more crit. You've also got these other sort of more standard ones. So this one gives you plus 15% crit after dealing a strike. So basically, at your first strike of the turn is going to be normal. Then after that, you're going to get plus 15% crit. So I'd probably more lean into this one because it just kind of applies automatically. But yeah, up to you. And this one is another option as well. Bypass melee evasion. I don't find I really have much of a problem with melee evasion, so I wouldn't really worry about this. The crit plus 5 crit's not very high. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about this too much. I worry more about the hit resistance, and that's where that calculated strike comes in. Self-preservation is another really good defensive skill that I definitely recommend. Plus 35% hit resistance if you get heavily wounded. So there's also Killing Spree gives you more melee precision after you've killed your first enemy, but again, I think with the calculated strike and the pheromone dispenser, you've probably got enough tools for precision, so you don't really need that extra thing. Momentum is just another crit increaser. So basically, until you get evaded, you can just get extra 20% crit. But yeah, see, I feel like all these crit things, if you were just gonna stack everything crit, then they could be kind of cool. But it doesn't really work with this build. This build requires too many other skills. So I'd probably take a defensive one here. Probably take either either bulwark or self-preservation. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that's pretty much the build. It's a pretty fun build. It's actually really it makes you think a lot when you use it. There's always so many different options where you switch one weapon, switch to 2 weapons. Just fire your pistol at a different opponent while you melee a different opponent. You've got so many different options to spread your damage and control how much damage you do and how much action points you use. As well as the ability to put down these pheromone canisters that help your whole team, and potentially if you use barricade or battle advice, that'll help your whole team as well. That's the build. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.